Welcome back, everyone. Um, as I talked about in my next, in my last, or is it next? No, it's my last discussion video. I said I would load up at least 2 to 3 chapters of Midnight for Charlie Bone, and yeah, within this week and within the next 2 weeks, you should see one, maybe two more videos of my gameplay for Infamous, um, and then definitely one chapter of the Warrior Heir. Cause yeah, I I think that's how it's gonna go. Um, so as always, I hope you guys enjoy, and I will definitely see what I can do about the speed of my uploads. Anyway, here we go. This will be, I believe it's chapter 8. Yes, it's chapter 8. Okay. Sorry, I'm a little disorganized, and I do mention it quite a bit that I am scatterbrained, so don't mind me. Okay. Breaking the rules. Benjamin and Fidelio arrived on Charlie's doorstep at the same time. Benjamin knew immediately that the cheerful-looking boy was Charlie's music teacher. For one thing, he was carrying a music case in one hand and a violin case in the other. And he just looked musical. They introduced themselves and Fidelio rang the bell. Grandma Bone opened the door. "Go away," she said to Benjamin. "Charlie's gonna have a music lesson. You'll be in the way." "No, he won't," said Fidelio. "We're gonna play a trio. Benjamin is essential." "A trio?" Grandma Bone raised a thick gray eyebrow. "Rubbish." Benjamin began to turn away, but Fidelio grabbed his arm. "We need him, Mrs. Bone," Fidelio insisted. "Dr. Saltweather, who is head of music, said we were to have some group playing, so Charlie can get used to joining in with the class." The lies you children tell. It beggars belief." However, she can't have been quite sure it was a lie, because she let Benjamin come in. Charlie was already practicing his scales when Fidelio and Benjamin arrived. "You've improved," said Fidelio. "We're going to make a lot of noise today, because all three of us are going to be playing." He opened his music case and pulled out a flute, and handed it to Benjamin. "I don't know how to," Benjamin began. "You soon will," said Fidelio. Sure enough, in less than 10 minutes, Benjamin was playing the flute. The three boys made a great deal of noise. Charlie expected Grandma Bone to come storming in at any minute, but she never did. It was a wonderful feeling to bang away and sing your head off, all in the cause of learning. He waited until Fidelio took a break before he broached the subject of the case. When Fidelio put his bow down at last, Charlie said quickly, "We have a problem, Fidelio, and we were wondering if you could help us." "Probably," said Fidelio eagerly. "Go ahead." Charlie told him about the locked case and the keys. He admitted the part about the baby. He didn't know Fidelio well enough for that yet. "So, you want me to hide this case for you?" said Fidelio. "That's easy. Our house is full of instrument cases. I can hide it under the others." "The thing is, we're being watched," said Charlie. "My aunts already know it's in Benjamin's house, so we've got to find something big to carry it in." I'll bring my dad's xylophone case, said Fidelio. It's gigantic. Funny you should say you're being watched. I could I could swear I saw Asa Pike on the other side of the road. He was in disguise as usual. He's in drama. But he can't act. Anyway, he was dressed in a long coat and a funny hat, and he was wearing a false mustache. But I always know Asa when I see him. He's got those yellowy, wolfish eyes. And red hair? Asked Charlie. Manfred's friend had yellow eyes. That's him. He's Manfred Bloor's slave. He'd do anything for him. Sell his own mother, probably. Charlie told Fidelio about the hypnotizing episode. I've heard rumors about Manfred, Fidelio said, gravely. They say if you got on the wrong side of him, you can be damaged forever. I'd advise you to keep out of his way. The door opened and Grandma Bone poked her head in. I presume you've finished, she said. You presume right, Mrs. Bone, said Fidelio. He began to gather his instruments and sheets of music. Charlie and Benjamin saw him to the door, but before Fidelio walked away, he said, See you tomorrow, Charlie. And very soon, you, Benjamin. Charlie looked up and down the street before closing the door. There was no sign of Asa Pike or anyone in a long coat and a false mustache. Turning to Ben, he whispered, Did you see my face yesterday, round about tea time? Benjamin, very surprised, said, I saw you in a yogurt pot. It made me feel sick. Sorry. It was just an experiment. Benjamin tried to guess what sort of an experiment it was, and then decided he didn't really want to know. Grandma Bone allowed Benjamin to stay for tea, but he was sent home early so that Charlie could pack his bag and prepare himself for the first day at Bloor's Academy. You won't have to take much, said Charlie's mother as she laid out the new pajamas. You'll be home again on Friday. Charlie wished he hadn't been given pajamas with teddy bears on them, but he didn't like to seem ungrateful, so he kept quiet about it. He packed a clean shirt, his sports kit, spare socks, and underwear, and the blue cape. I think you're supposed to wear this, Charlie, said his mother, pulling out the cape. I've sewn your name at the back in green thread, see? I'm afraid it's the only color I had. Charlie pushed the cape back again. I'll take it out when I get there, he said. Tomorrow, as it would be his first day, his mother was going to take him to the academy entrance. The paperwork for registration had all been completed by Grandma Bone. On Friday, he would come home on the school bus and get off at the bus stop at the end of Filbert Street. There's something else you might like to take, his mother murmured. She left the room, and when she came back a few moments later, she was holding something wrapped in white tissue paper. They said you were to wear a blue tie, she said. And Grandma Bone has provided one, but she folded back the tissue and held up a bright blue tie. At one end of the tie, a small gold Y had been stitched in silk thread. It was your father's, she told Charlie. The Y is for U-beam. Although your father's name was Bone, he had U-beam blood, and that, it seems, carries a great deal of weight at Bloor's. The U-beams are related to the Bloors, apparently. Related? Do you mean like cousins? Charlie wondered why his mother hadn't mentioned such an important fact before. Distant cousins. Anything to do with a Red King? Asked Charlie. Your father did speak of him. So why did Grandma give me a tie without a Y? Perhaps you have to prove yourself first, Charlie. Perhaps they'll think you'll go astray, like Lyle did. She tucked the tie into Charlie's bag. Anyway, you never know, you might need it. When she had gone, Charlie took out the tie and examined it. The material was soft and shiny, silk or satin, perhaps. He pressed it to his face and sniffed it. The tie smelled of the way his mother used to smell when she still had nice things to wear. All her best clothes had been worn out, and now, Charlie realized, his mother looked just a bit shabby. Next morning, Macy cooked Charlie such a big breakfast it overflowed his plate. He managed to chew a bit of bacon, but that was all. His stomach was churning. The kitchen seemed to be full of nervous people. Even Uncle Peyton had turned up. "I'd drive you to the school, dear boy," he told Charlie. "But there's no parking to be had within a mile of the place. The staff are very possessive about their car park." Everyone looked uncomfortable knowing that Peyton couldn't go out in daylight anyway. And then Grandma Bones said, "A taxi's been ordered. It's just turned up." "I don't want to go in a taxi," cried Charlie. "I'll look like a real nerd." "You'll do as you're told," said Grandma Bone. "Now, fetch your things." With tears and kisses from Macy, a wave from Peyton, and a grim smile from Grandma Bone, Charlie and his mother were bundled into the taxi. They were dropped off in a side road leading to the academy, and then walked through a medieval square where cobblestones surrounded a fountain of stone swans. Ahead was a tall gray building, ancient and imposing. The walls that flanked the square were 5 stories high, their windows dark rectangles of reflecting glass. On either side of the huge arched entrance, there was a tall tower with a pointed roof, and when they reached the wide flight of steps up to the entrance, Charlie's mother suddenly stopped and stared up at a window in one of the towers. Her face was drained of color, and for a moment Charlie thought she was going to faint. "What is it, Mum?" he asked. "I thought someone was watching me," she murmured. "Charlie, I must go now." She kissed him quickly and hurried across the square. Charlie became aware of other children arriving in buses at the end of the square. Before long, he was surrounded by leaping, running, walking, and shouting children, all in capes of blue or green or purple. "Charlie, put on your cape," called a voice, "or you'll be for it." Fidelio emerged through the bustling crowd. "You have got a cape, haven't you?" "I forgot to mention it." "Yes." Charlie pulled the cape out of his bag and put it on. "Good. Now come with me," said Fidelio. "Keep close. There's a bit of a crush on Monday mornings." They were now in a paved courtyard, and as Charlie followed Fidelio, his eye was caught by one of the windows overlooking them. There was a long, black stain on the gray wall beneath it. "That's where Manfred nearly burned to death," said Fidelio in a harsh whisper. "The fire?" asked Charlie. Fidelio nodded and rolled his eyes. They had reached a doorway where 2 huge doors studded with bronze figures stood wide open. Charlie stared at them in awe as he passed through. He found himself in a long stone-flagged hall, and suddenly all the laughter and shouting died away. Only for the sound of feet tapping on stone could be heard. Keeping Fidelio in sight, Charlie made his way through the throng of children crisscrossing the hall and disappearing into doors on either side. Fidelio seemed to be making for the door with 2 long crossed trumpets hanging above it. They were nearly there when there was a shriek, and someone grabbed hold of Charlie's cape. He looked around to see a girl with purple hair sprawled on the flagstones. She was a very odd sight. Apart from her purple cape and hair, she had a purple pattern on her forehead, and she was wearing purple shoes with high stiletto heels and very pointed toes. Her rucksack had fallen open, scattering books and pens in all directions. "Sorry," said the girl. She began to giggle. "Shoes'll be my downfall. Or, fall down." She giggled even more. Charlie was about to help her when a voice ordered, "Leave it, Bone." Asa Pike, also in purple, stood glaring down at the girl. "Olivia Vertigo, what are the rules? Recite." Scrambling to her feet, the girl chanted, "Silence in the hall, talking not at all. Silence if you fall, never cry or call. Blah, blah, blah." Asa grabbed her arm. "Insolence isn't amusing," he barked. "Come with me." He began to drag her away. "My books!" wailed Olivia. Charlie scooped up the scattered books and pens, while Fidelio, putting a finger to his lips, found Olivia's purple rucksack and helped Charlie to fill it. As soon as they were through the door beneath the crossed trumpets, Fidelio said, "We can talk now." They were in a large tiled cloakroom with lockers covering 2 walls and coat hooks on the other 2. A row of basins ran down the center of the room. "What's going to happen to that girl?" asked Charlie. "She'll probably get detention, a horrible lecture from Manfred, and then not allowed home until Sunday. She's only been here half a term, but she's already had detention twice. She'd probably have been expelled if she wasn't so brilliant at acting. I was sent into her class once to fetch Mr. Irving, and she was doing this solo piece. It was amazing." Fidelio showed Charlie his locker and then took him to the oak-paneled assembly hall. A group of musicians stood on the stage tuning their instruments. "First, we do the school hymn and then registration," said Fidelio. Charlie followed him to the benches on the front row. Gradually, the hall filled up with girls and boys, all wearing blue capes. There were about 100 children aged between 11 and 18. Charlie thought he must have been the youngest until a small boy slipped in beside him. "Hello," said the boy. "I'm Billy Raven." "I'm Charlie Bone," said Charlie. The small boy smiled. He had almost white hair, and his eyes were a strange dark red. "I'm an albino," he explained. "I don't see too well, but I hear very well." "Aren't you a bit young for Bloors?" said Charlie. "I'm 7, Billy replied. "But I'm an orphan, so they took me in. Besides, I'm endowed." "So am I," Charlie whispered. Billy beamed at Charlie. "I'm glad," he said softly. "Now there are 3 of us." Charlie didn't have time to ask who the third endowed musician was, because a tall man with white hair had walked onto the stage. "Dr. Saltweather," whispered Fidelio on Charlie's other side. There were 5 other music teachers on the stage. 2 youngish women, an old man with spectacles, a merry-looking man with lots of wiry hair, and someone whom Charlie found himself staring at. He had never seen such a blank sort of face. The man was tall and lean, with black hair that he had apparently forgotten to comb. His expression didn't change once, even when the orchestra struck up and everyone else began to sing. When assembly was over, Fidelio took Charlie to a door beside the stage. A notice on the door said, "Mr. Paltry, Wind." "I'll see you at break," said Fidelio. "I'm off to strings now, and Miss Crystal." "Who are the other teachers on the stage?" asked Charlie. "Well, you've got old Mr. Paltry. Don't envy you there. Then there's Mr. O'Connor. He does guitar and stuff like that. The 2 ladies teach strings, and Dr. Saltweather does brass and the choir." "What about the man at the end, the tall man?" "Oh, Mr. Pilgrim, Fidelio grimaced. He teaches piano, but hardly anyone ever goes to him. He's too weird. Weird? He never says anything. You don't know if you've done well or not. My father taught me to play piano. He teaches in a normal school. I'd better go now. I'm late. So Fidelio's father taught in a normal school. What did that make Bloor's? Very peculiar, Charlie supposed. He watched his new friend fly across the hall to another door, and then went in to face Mr. Paltry. Went. Mr. Paltry didn't like endowed children. He made this very clear to Charlie. Endowed children were a waste of his time. They had their own uncommon talents, but they were of no use to anyone as far as Mr. Paltry could see. At the end of an uncomfortable and unproductive lesson, Charlie was told to leave his cape in the cloakroom and go to the garden for a run. Where's the garden? Charlie asked. He thought this was a reasonable question, but Mr. Paltry seemed to find it very annoying. Where do you think? He snapped. Luckily, Charlie found Fidelio in the cloakroom. Everyone has to have a run after the first lesson, he told Charlie. Come with me. The garden was hardly what Charlie would have called a garden. There was no end to it as far as he could see. There were no walls or fences either. The back of the academy overlooked a huge field where children ran or jogged in twos and threes, and sometimes alone. A deep wood surrounded the field, and in the distance a great reddish-colored wall could be seen, disappearing into the trees. Fidelio told Charlie that this was the ruin. Hundreds of years ago it was a huge castle, he said, but now it's just a ruin. Most of the roof has fallen in, but there are still some creepy passages and weird statues and crumbly steps. The trees have gone and grown all around it, and even inside it, and that makes it even more spooky. Have you been in there? Charlie nodded at the sinister-looking wall. Have I? Fidelio gave a grim smile. Every winter, at the end of November, we have to play the rune game. Everyone has to go in, whether they want to or not. 2 years ago, a girl went in and never came out. Fidelio began to run around the field, and Charlie, pacing beside him, asked, Didn't they find the girl then? Never, said Fidelio. He lowered his voice. And they say it's happened before. Capes were found, but never a body? Suggested Charlie. Fidelio nodded. They just disappeared. Charlie glanced at the distant dark wall and shuddered. After a 15-minute run, the sound of a hunting horn rang out across the field, and children began to troop back into the building. You've had your worst lesson, Fidelio told Charlie. Nothing will be as bad as Mr. Paltry. It's in English next, and I'll be in the same class. But first, our capes. We're only allowed to take them off for games or running. When Charlie got to the cloakroom, his cape had disappeared. The only one left hanging on the hooks was a tatty garment with jagged tears in one corner. Put it on, Charlie, Fidelio advised. It's better than nothing. Someone must have taken yours by mistake. Charlie wouldn't wear the tattered cape. It's not mine, and someone might come looking for it. Fidelio looked anxious. Go on, Charlie. Please, wear it, or there'll be trouble. But Charlie wouldn't. He didn't realize what sort of trouble Fidelio meant. If he had, he might have done as his friend asked. The English teacher, Mr. Carp, was a broad, red-faced man. As soon as Charlie walked in without his cape, Mr. Carp's small eyes fixed themselves on him. What he wanted to know, what was Charlie thinking of? Where was the essential garment? "If you mean my cape, sir, I can't find it," said unsuspecting Charlie. Mr. Carp carried a cane. He brought it down, whack, across his desk. "Out, boy!" he screamed. "But, sir," said Fidelio, "it's not his fault." "Shut up, gun!" shouted Mr. Carp. For a big man, he had a high voice. "You!" He pointed his cane at Charlie. "Out this minute!" Unwilling to cause any more trouble, Charlie left the room as quickly as he could. Once he was outside the classroom, however, he didn't know where to go. So, he just stood by the wall and stared down the hall to the great doors that led to the outside world. The flagstone hall was freezing cold, and the thought of spending the night in Bloor's academy was becoming less and less appealing. Just when Charlie thought the English lesson might be ending and Fidelio could come and help him search for his missing cape, someone came out of a door further down the hall. It was Asa Pike. The red-haired boy gave Charlie a slow, malicious smile and walked up to him. "Well, if it isn't Charlie Bone," sniggered Asa. "I see you've transgressed on your first day." "Trans what?" said Charlie. "Did I ask you to speak?" Asa stopped smiling. "Where's your cape, Bone?" "I don't know." "Come and see the head boy." Asa locked his hand round the back of Charlie's neck and pushed him down the hall. Charlie saw that they were making for a door marked prefects. Asa opened the door and pushed Charlie inside. There were several older boys in the room, lounging in armchairs and sofas. Some of them glanced up at Charlie and then went back to their books or their previous conversations. Beneath a window at the end of the room, there was a long desk. And behind the desk sat Manfred Bloor in a purple cape. There were 2 chairs on the other side of the desk. In one of them sat the girl with purple hair, swinging her feet. Asa pushed Charlie into the chair. Olivia grinned at him. "No cape," Asa announced. Charlie quickly looked away from Manfred's stare. He didn't want to be hypnotized again. Manfred said, "Has no one told you the rules, Charlie Bone?" "No." Charlie looked over Manfred's head. They're usually sent with the pupils to the pupils before they come here. Didn't you get any?" "No." Charlie stared through the window behind Manfred. "They were probably sent to my grandmother, and she forgot to give them to me." It was quite likely that Grandma Bone had deliberately withheld the rules. Thought Charlie, just to get him into trouble. Manfred opened a red box file, extracted a piece of paper, and handed it to Charlie. "The rules. Study them. Learn them, Bone." He turned his attention to Olivia. "As for you, Olivia Vertigo, it seems that you can't learn. I'm giving you both detention on Friday night. Your parents will be informed. They can collect you on Saturday." "You can't do that," said Charlie, leaping up. "It's my first week. My mum'll—" "Mum," said Manfred scornfully. "Mum," repeated Asa. "We don't talk about mums in here." "Mums don't exist in here," Manfred added darkly. And that, my friends, is the end of chapter 8. I gotta say, man, it's totally been a while, and we are, I'm gonna say, about 1 chapter from being halfway. 1 chapter being yeah, we're 1 chapter away from being halfway. Yeah. So, I'll figure out how quickly I can upload these chapters for you guys. And as always, thank you for listening. And for more info, the link will be in the description for my Twitter. Bye.